Hello, my name is Rich Howard, owner of Architectural Builder Supply. This video is to bring you a closer look at the Pemko. This is their part number 176B. This is a mill solid architectural bronze, sometimes called brass. That's okay to call it brass. The technical term, the industry term would be architectural bronze. Commercial saddle threshold is what this is. This is a 6-inch sample piece just for purposes of this video. I don't encounter these thresholds enough to have the ability to make a video on a 3-foot piece or a 4-foot piece. So this sample will serve. Okay. This is a piece of solid extruded architectural bronze. It's an amalgamation of basically 4 different base materials that this alloy is specifically applied to the hardware industry. This alloy, of which for bronze there's lots of alloys, there's lots of changed combinations of percentages of what's used. This is the one that's appropriate for thresholds. I actually have in the website, you'll find a link to a video where I show oil rub bronze, mill, satin, and polished brass, where you can see all the finishes. There's also a link to an article there on that alloy. Should you ever need that, reach out to me, or you might be able to find it just in YouTube. Now, what would you use this for? First, the dimensional properties. Let's talk about that. The 176, it's a 7-inch overall wide. You could have guessed that from the 7 in the part number. The overall height is 1/2 inch, very typical. Fluted top. Okay. What would you use this for? Let's talk about that right now. If you are enjoying this video, please click thumbs up or like, and also please consider subscribing to our channel. Let's move on to the rest of the video. Now, before we proceed on what is this for, this weighs an astonishing 0.26 pound per inch. So this single piece weighs over 1.5 pounds, the single 6-inch piece. So figure 3.3 and an 1/8 inch, 3 1/8 pound per foot. So a 6-foot piece of this is going to be pushing 19 pounds. So it's one heck of a threshold. Now, where would you use this? Well, for all intents and purposes, it's a saddle threshold. If you use your imagination, you can see why it's called a saddle threshold. So in that regard, it's a pretty garden variety profile, but it's anything but garden variety when it comes to the base material. And where you're going to use a typical profile in such a robust, expensive, heavy, durable, elegant piece of base material is when you have an application that calls for the durability. The front doors of City Hall in Chicago all have solid bronze thresholds. If you remember the Blues Brothers movie, the building that they run into at the end and they put the garbage can in front of the doors and all the police are running after them, that's City Hall. If you walk in that building today, it looks just like it did in 1980 in that movie, or 1979, whatever year that came out. The point of saying that is, what application is going to get more traffic than the City Hall doors of Chicago? The Greyhound bus station, high-end, very large hotels, applications that just get tremendous amount of cycles every day through their doorways. So durability is where you're going to use this. The other instance where we see these used is if you're building a $6 million house, or here in Southwest Florida, that's not to say that that's a drop in a bucket, but that's commonplace. You're not going to put in a $30 or a $60 aluminum threshold. It just doesn't go. So you'll use it just to be proportional with what you're building. But I find that first reason to be why, but then also the third reason is because of the finish. Clients will want mill. This is what the material looks like when it's extruded through the die set at the mill. This is literally raw architectural bronze. Nothing's been done to it. It has this surface imperfection. There's no gouging or dents or scratches, but it's streaky, and that's what this looks like. If you're ordering mill, be mindful. It's going to look streaky like this. I've had clients call and say, "You sent me something defective." No, I sent you what you ordered. So be educated as to the difference between mill or satin brass or polished brass or oil rubbed. Being architectural bronze, you can technically do anything to this. You could powder coat it, you can plate it, but as a threshold, you probably wouldn't want to necessarily engage in those secondary finishes over this. People will order this because they want this to patina with exposure to the environment, or they'll want a true 606 or satin brass finish, or a true 605 polished brass finish with or without lacquer, or they'll want a true 613 oil rub bronze finish over this. And over this base material is the only way to achieve those finishes. Mill, 605, 606, or 613, those BHMA numbers. Durability, proportionality, or the fact that you're looking for a finish and you can't get it in any other base material. Those would be my reasons. Screws are included. The factory did include some screws. You will note that they are non-magnetic. That doesn't tell us the base material absolutely, but it does tell us they're not steel. And the factory will tell us these are brass. So be mindful when you're installing these. That's a very soft screw. The hole has to be completely properly pre-drilled so that you don't shear or strip the screw out. These can be ordered in any length that you need in terms of length. If you have a custom length in mind, my suggestion is that you order the next longest piece or pieces and indicate in the comment field the length you'd like for us to cut the material back to. The reasoning is you may not get such a clean factory edge when you trim your material. Now, back to the 7-inch. Why might you need 7-inch? Well, you are likely going to want the threshold, speaking of proportionality again, proportional to the depth of the frame. You might have a 9-inch deep wall and you've got an 8-inch frame or whatever you have. You're not going to want a 4-inch threshold there. Even though it might be okay, you might want something a little larger. But also you might want something a little wider because you're going to cope the threshold around the profile of the frame itself. That's done. You might also run, in terms of length, it long. If your 3-foot wide door is actually 38.5, you might run that long so that you can have the threshold go in front of the jamb itself. You'd have to treat the back of this, and the proper way to do it would be to have a mitered return back here, which substantially impacts the cost. But the proper way to specify a threshold, a saddle threshold in an exterior application, is that you run the entire width of the frame and then you miter back the returns, is how that would be. So the height in 1/2 inch, by the way, that's handicap compliant. Typical 1/2 inch is easy in terms of compatibility when it comes to a 5/8 undercut or a 3/4 inch undercut. You can get solid bronze in 1/4 inch rise as well, in some other variants in terms of profile. But 1/2 inch is, you know, pretty Swiss Army knife in terms of height. It's going to work in most applications. And then that 7-inch, that's a variable that you select based on what suits your application best. Okay. Now the length again, you're paying for every foot. So if you need something that's 78-inch, you're paying for 84. So be mindful that if you ordered 84 and we cut it back to 78, you're still paying for 84. You might say, you know what, give me 84-inch. I'm paying for it anyway, or however that might work. You may or may not want to specify this as having holes drilled when it's such an expensive piece of equipment that's considered specialty. In my mind it is. You're going to want to make sure, do you want the holes drilled in it or not? I've had clients where they've ordered literally $15,000 of just solid bronze thresholds. That has occurred multiple times in my career. We have to talk about, do you want holes in it or not? So most of the time they say, I do not. I will drill them where I want them myself. It's a hole, it's a countersink, that sort of scenario. Other times the client will say, no, standard holes are fine. This is what I've got. It's going to be no problem. There you go. But when it comes to something like this, it's not unusual to have it, to have the holes drilled in the field. If you don't specify, it's going to come with holes, and it's going to come with standard fasteners. Let's switch to the screen view now, and let's take a closer look at some of the supporting information. If you've not hit subscribe yet, we would very much appreciate if you did, and hopefully you're enjoying this video. Now, let's get back to it. Here is the item that we are looking at. I happen to have some photographs, and we'll look at those in a moment. And we can see a profile that we have here, 1/2 by 7. What makes this handicap compliant is it doesn't exceed a 1/2 inch in height. Back in the early days of ADA in the 90s, it was 1/4 inch. The other component is that the rise over run does not exceed that. That does not exceed the formula. That's necessary for that. For every 1/2 inch in rise, for every 1/4 inch in rise, you have to have a 1/2 inch in run, or it might be greater than that. I'd have to look up I don't recall the formula now. It's escaping me. I think it's 2 to 1. You can't exceed that sort of relationship, 2 to 1. I will show you where the governing document is also. 7 inch, 1/2 inch tall. So the slope of that and the overall height allow it to be handicap compliant. Mill finish. Let me show you where that file is, that video I had suggested earlier. So currently it's under Contact Us. And then we have a link called Video Gallery. And currently this video is in the last quarter of 2021. Page 2, and then we're going to do a find function for mill. Yeah, okay, so mill. This video here will show you mill, satin, polished, and oil rubbed. This is the alloy article that I mentioned earlier. So on my desktop said before, the next one is satin bronze. Mill, satin, polished, oil rubbed. US4 or 606 is a good way to call this. That's okay. Satin bronze, and people are going to want that because it's an. So that's a just to show you where that video is, since I had mentioned it. Let's get back to our page. Designed to span a given area, usually under a door. Supplied pre-drilled. They do indicate some fasteners are here. Number 10. It's not a machine screw. It's just a wood screw. They do indicate that it's barrier free. It's also fire rated. Let's take a look at those photos I mentioned. Here's a image showing the threshold, a little close up, showing the grooving pattern to the top. It's nice to have that grooving pattern. A smooth top threshold is not, I don't prefer those. I've had my foot slip out from under me walking through them. Picture showing what that streak will look like. That's guaranteed when it's a mill threshold. Profile image. A couple of webs down below here. Top view of the item somewhat. The underside, showing you close up what that streak or mill will look like. And then the fasteners that are included. Okay, now there's a link below this video as seen here. Now here's that video, here is the manufacturer's page that I just mentioned. So when you click on the manufacturer's page here, our manufacturer's link is going to load. That will allow you to review not only all of the Pemko products that we sell, but also all of the, by means of this horizontal navigation, also a link to the manufacturer's website, as well as a link to the full product catalog. We've got some prior catalogs up here as well, and just other encyclopedic documents. Speaking of that, the A117-1 is the document that I referred to. And if you were to search for the word threshold, you're going to find all of the requirements. If provided, thresholds at doorways shall be 1/2 inch maximum in height. Raised thresholds and changes in level at doorways shall comply with sections 302 and 303. Let's take a look at those sections. The bottom line is, this is literally the governing document. This is what will be referred to in architectural, this is what will be referred to in construction documents. This is the teeth of the federal law known as ADA. And I was right about that. It was 2-to-1. Forgive me for being less than confident. I've learned and forgotten this more than I'd care to admit to. A 1/4 inch is okay. You get taller than a 1/4 inch, maximum half, you've got to observe that 2-to-1. Okay, so that's the governing document. Now, back to something fun. The manufacturer's catalog is here. We can fire that up. We can do a search for 176 on our keyboard, and we're going to get eventually to the page where it's shown. The point of showing this to you in these saddle thresholds in the catalog, which in this catalog is page 104. This is a 2021 catalog. You got a 171. If you see a B, that's solid bronze. 5-inch, 6-inch, 7-inch. Not 8-inch though. They can make 8-inch. They're going to weld these two pieces together, a 5 and a 3, or a whatever this is. Can't do, well, they can do a 10-inch because they're fabricating again. So the bottom line is those are half saddle thresholds, and those half saddles are down here. 3-inch, 2-inch, 4-inch, 5-inch, 4-inch, 5-inch. And there you go. So if you see a B in the available finishes, just the letter B, that tells you it's solid architectural bronze. So a neat way to know other things that may or may not be available from Pemko. Let's wrap up this video on camera. If you've made it this far into this video, you must be determined to see it through to the end, and we appreciate your hanging in there with us and watching this entire video. It means a lot. It takes a lot of work to create these videos in the sense that you know, it's time taken away from doing other things. However, the advantage for me personally of creating these videos is the fact that it does allow myself to either learn about something new, to reacquaint myself with something, or to reinforce what I believe that I already know. Any comments that you might leave down below would be greatly appreciated. Thank you. Okay, to wrap it up, an epic piece of threshold probably does deserve an epic long video, so I guess I've delivered on that, and I apologize for my lack of brevity, but this piece of material that is extremely expensive needs to be well understood, is the bottom line. Lots of people make thresholds, perimeter gasketing, door sweeps, door bottoms, the like. No one has the variety that Pemko does. So if you're looking for the most available selection, go to their catalog first. No one has more than they do. Be mindful that if you have need for a custom item, a custom profile, something that's not in there, remember, things can be welded, things can be coped, things can be notched, things can be welded, things can be finished, powder coated. So keep in mind, if you don't see exactly what you want, reach out to us. We've had plenty of opportunities where we've custom manufactured material for people just because it needed to be so. I had an 18-inch wide threshold for a client made one time. Mitered returns, thresholds for floor closer installations as well, where there's a removable top panel. If you've got a floor closer, you're going to need a threshold, and it's going to be nice to have one that allows you to service the floor closer without removing the entire threshold. Pemko does all of that. Okay. My name is Rich, Architectural Builders. Any questions on the 176B or any other item, let me know. This same item can be ordered as satin, polished, or oil rubbed. There ought to be different products in our site for those different finishes. If you have any trouble finding those, just let us know. Thank you. Again, thank you for watching, and if you've enjoyed this video, please click thumbs up. Please subscribe and maybe even send the video to someone that you know. Thank you.